Hello, everyone, and welcome to podcast number 3 of Beyond News and Evil. My name is Will, and with me, as always, is
Teun, and we're happy to talk about an animal incident at the Cincinnati Zoo.
Yes, a very infamous incident. I'm sure that you all know about it. It's been very popular. It's been very well popularized on the internet. There's been a lot of different memes and different articles about it, talking about it. It's very interesting that this has become something that's so prevalent in the news. You know, I don't know how that came to happen. Maybe you have a perspective on that.
Yeah, I think that we as a human species are becoming more aware of our ecological position and how we relate to other species, particularly with regards to how we eat them, but also how we keep them in zoos and how we affect their environment.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true, and it's probably because it's become so detrimental at this point. Mm-hmm. It's become so blatantly bad what we've been doing, and so obviously dangerous for us as a species too. And that's sort of a weird perspective to take, because we only realize how bad it is once it's bad for us. So it's not bad inherently or in principle. It's only bad when we start doing these things to different species or different regions that directly have an impact on us, and suddenly now it's morally wrong.
Yeah, and even now there are lots of factions who are still denying climate change, or are denying the massive effect that we have on extinction levels and all these stuff.
I've actually had this conversation, and this is kind of off topic, but it's interesting nonetheless. I've had this conversation with someone who said, "Oh, I don't believe in climate change or global warming."
Yeah.
And so what I said was, okay, it's not about belief at this point. It's a scientific fact that the climate is changing and it is getting hotter. You could hold a position that humans are not impacting it or not changing it in a certain way, right? You could have that position, but you can't deny that it is getting warmer and it is changing. I mean, it's just the way of the world, just the way of Earth, I think.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. It's not a matter of belief, but ultimately, what you believe is, as a truism, a matter of belief. And the thing is, how do people determine what they believe? And most people determine what they believe based on what they hear, and not on some kind of methodological standard. But this, as you said, is another discussion. So I suggest we talk about the Cincinnati incident.
But it's interesting that
tell us what happened.
Yeah, it's interesting that some of these events can force us to challenge our beliefs, though. And so that's what this incident in the zoo did for us, and it's become so popular because it is challenging some of our basic assumptions. So what happened is a child, unfortunately, accidentally fell into an exhibit, and exhibit of an ape, and the ape was attacking or I don't know. I haven't seen much footage. I don't know if there is footage, but I've read a few articles about it, and the ape was aggressive towards the animal, and so what they did was they killed
the child. You mean?
Yes, the child. Yeah. So what they did was they killed the ape and saved the child's life.
Yeah, that's right. I did actually watch some footage. There was some footage, though it was heavily chopped up. What I could see was, there was some footage of the ape standing over the child as if it was guarding it. There was some footage which was earlier of the when the child had just fallen into the moat of the enclosure, where the ape was also standing over the child, and it looked as if it was inspecting the child. And then there was also some footage of where you could see the astounding power of the gorilla, where it was dragging the 4-year-old child through the moat with astounding ease.
How does a child get into the exhibit, though? I mean, it must be very difficult.
I think, as far as I know, the child first climbed over a small plastic fence, and then through some shrubberies, and then jumped into the moat. So it was definitely not a smart action.
Yeah, and I think, there could be someone who can make the claim that, well, this kid sort of deserves a Darwin Award. You know what that is?
I mean, it's a kid. Kids make really, really stupid mistakes. You really have to learn to be smart. No going about it.
Well, there are some species that, when they're born with the instincts to run away from danger, and clearly this kid was not born with that instinct. He went out of his way to get into a situation that was dangerous.
It's Well, to some degree that's true, but what we see with all these species that have these inborn instincts, like flies, flies have inborn reflexes for evading large objects like your hand if you try to swat them, but these reflexes can be manipulated and exploited in such a way that you will always swat a fly because the fly flies into your hand.
What do you mean?
Well, flies fly in a particular direction depending on the light that they perceive. But this is another subject.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't think we shouldn't blame the child.
Okay.
That's the first thing. I mean, it was a really young child.
4 years old, right?
Children make mistakes, and that's how we learn. And luckily, the child survived. That's the good thing that we can take away from this incident.
Yeah.
Now, should we blame the mother? Because there are some people who've been saying that the mother, who was busy with one of our other children at the moment, was being neglectful. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an appropriate assessment of what she did. She was neglecting the other child. That's no reason to blame her. I mean, when you have two different entities that you have to direct your attention at, you can't always do it simultaneously. Sometimes you have to do one at a time. And it's natural to assume that there's a fence there and that's enough time that you can look one way and look back and be okay. This is why there's been a big commotion about putting children on leashes and stuff like that. This is a way to have your attention on them in a way that's not directly, but is more indirect. So have you heard about this? You've seen this?
No, I've never heard of this.
It's a big thing in America. Yeah, these
people do this?
Yeah, they put them on leashes. Well, they have like the children have sort of a
embarrassing.
backpack on or something, and they have attached to them a little leash thing. But I mean, it's embarrassing. But at this point, that child,
So, do you have an idea up to what age people would employ this tactic?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, I think.
Like, do you have to wear a harness until you're 8 years old? Because
I don't know the cutoff. It never happened to me. My mom honestly would have let the ape just have me at that point. She was like, well, Will was in there being an idiot, so just let him go, keep the monkey alive. But
my parents as well. He's like, oh, he fell into that boat, just let him drown.
We'll make more. No, but what's interesting about this is that it raises a question of what sort of rights do animals have, because clearly when the people went to protect the child, they chose the child's life over the animals, and it's natural to do this. It's easier to have empathy for the same species because we look the same, we act the same, we can communicate. But to what extent should the animal be protected in this? Because it was captured, or maybe raised there, but it was just doing its own thing in the enclosure. It didn't come out and to attack. It was encroached upon.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
So we clearly have this sort of.
And in addition to that, it was held in captivity.
Yeah.
Before and during, so it was set up for the situation to happen. Because if it were to live in the wild, then there wouldn't be any children falling in moats near it. And there wouldn't have been the threat of a gorilla squashing a child's head.
Yeah, and there wouldn't have been all the people bystanding around, affecting it too. Because in the video you were telling me, right, they're all yelling and scared, which is of course a natural reaction to have when the child's in danger. But it doesn't help the situation at all. So, there's no real good training on how to act before you go to a zoo. And these are wild animals. They haven't been trained very well, and they're enclosed. And I think that monkeys have a certain amount of intelligence that they realize where they are, and they see other species staring at them, and they're confused why they're in a cage. Maybe they don't have the knowledge to know that it is a cage, but they know that their environment is very limited, And so it's a different kind of life.
In that sense, they know it's a cage, right? Because they know that there's no escape. And you see this because there's a lot of animals who behave entirely differently in captivity. They are less energetic. They feed differently. They don't want to fuck.
Pandas.
I mean that's a classic case with animals that are kept in captivity. But you mentioned something about the bystanders, and this is I think one of the points where they could have improved on their on the way that they handled the situation, because I'm of the opinion that the zoo did the right thing,
Mm.
given that they had no
Alternatives.
Well, they had alternatives. They could have shot it with a tranquilizer and hoped for the best.
Oof, it's a gamble.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what their problem was. That was a really big gamble because a gorilla is a 400-pound animal. It's
Sure.
amazingly strong. It's like the best WWE wrestler and then some more, because they're built in such a way that their muscles are incredibly strong.
Of course.
So it could easily have broken multiple bones in the child's body, especially if it would have gotten angry, and you know, perhaps it would have gotten angry if it was shot with a tranquilizer and didn't fall asleep immediately.
Yeah, just that reaction of the pain
Yeah.
and something.
Yeah, in addition with all the people screaming. So what I think they should have done is they should have had a protocol for evacuating the people around the ape pit.
Yeah, or I think also something that would be effective is when you're going into a zoo to have some sort of, a few minute, maybe a couple minutes training video saying, okay, when you go to a monkey exhibit or you go to some exhibits, don't look them in the eyes. That's important. Don't bare your teeth at them is also really bad.
Oh yeah.
Don't yell or hit the glass.
We had a discussion about this, about the woman in the Netherlands who was attacked by a gorilla that jumped over the enclosure and kidnapped her basically for a few hours. And he kind of dominated her, like he would a gorilla female.
That's a great word.
Well, that's what he did. It's a technical term in this case.
Okay, fair enough.
Wow. Yeah, it was no laughing matter for her.
No,
that's to be sure.
And there's another example I saw online somewhere where the person is pounding their chest at the glass, and the monkey runs and collides in the glass and cracks it, and then they run away. And people are terrified.
Yeah.
But I mean, most of these people who are encountering these exhibits and who can have almost direct contact. I mean, there's not a lot in the way. Apparently, if a 4-year-old child can get over it. It's not a lot of separation there. They have very little knowledge about how these animals behave and how they act. And I mean, people like us who haven't been raised in a situation where we're going to need to have that information. We come from a society where there's no animals around.
True.
I just encounter humans, maybe a squirrel or something every day. It doesn't matter. But I don't have that information. I don't have that training. So I think maybe there's some protocol that would be nice there. But also, I think just more in general, and I'll throw out a hypothetical situation for you, see what you think.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an example here of speciesism, is what I'm going to call it, where we prioritize our own species over others, which is, of course, natural to do. Like I said, we empathize more. But let me throw an example at you. What would happen if someone purposefully climbed over the what's it called, the fence or whatever, to go and attack and kill the monkey? What do you think should happen in that situation? Should we kill the person? Should we just let them kill the monkey and arrest them?
I'm not entirely sure, but I suspect that their protocol would be to kill the monkey if there was a threat to this person who climbed in the enclosure to attack the monkey. Because only a few weeks before the incident with the gorilla at the Cincinnati Zoo, there was an incident in China in the zoo. Where a man, suicidal, I think it was China, but I'm not entirely sure, where a suicidal man had jumped into the lion or tiger enclosure.
Oh man.
And they had to shoot one of the animals to save him. So it was, in a sense, it was a really similar story, except that this was a grown man who had very dark motives, while the other was a small child who made a terribly dumb mistake.
Do you think it's right to prioritize our own species over other species? Because in this situation, it seems like, especially with the situation with in the Cincinnati Zoo, I think that is a good time to do this. There's an accident. There's a complete, it's not happening on purpose. The child falls in there, and so you have to take steps. But when an adult does this, it shows kind of our perspective on animals and how they should be treated, and our prioritization of ourselves. But then also that can play out, like we were talking about earlier, in the environment and how we treat animals that are just in the wild. And it also plays out there, and so there's kind of an extension, and these are kind of a weird iteration, specific case of this.
I think you've got to look at it this way. When you come to the situation as an animal handler, and you see a person being mauled by a tiger, or perhaps being threatened by a massive gorilla, then you have to act on the protocol that you have learned. You can't go stand by and maybe analyze the situation
have some
for
sort of
half an
philosophical
hour,
debate.
maybe scream at the man, hey, were you suicidal? Were you trying to kill yourself? So, because in case you were, I won't shoot the animals because I won't need to.
Yeah.
But you don't know.
Follow the rules.
No, I mean, it's not just about following the rules. It's about helping a person who is in danger. And in this case, it's clearly a case of speciesism. But the problem is that for one, speciesism is the standard position.
Yeah, it's instinctual. It's a instinctual position. It's something that's helped us survive.
Yeah, and in addition to that, it's also it's not just a case of speciesism. It's also a case of pragmatics. It's a case of, well, you can't argue with a gorilla. You can't argue with a tiger. You can't act in any way that will dissuade these animals from acting violently towards their would-be victims.
I'm not sure how true that is. It seems like a bit of an assumption.
Well,
there's some especially apes that are really intelligent that you can communicate with. Yeah. I'm not sure to what extent we can persuade them.
Given the situation with 50 people around the enclosure screaming at it, rah,
it's
rah,
not
rah,
ideal. Yeah.
And in addition, the excitement and the doubt that the animal was experiencing, that the gorilla was experiencing here, and then in the case of the tigers, they eat people. They don't care.
Yeah.
How would you dissuade a tiger? So the tiger is a clear case, right? So the tiger, there's definitely no way to argue with it or to communicate it positively with it.
Yeah.
The gorilla, perhaps there might have been a way, but given the situation, they really had no guarantee.
Yeah, and what you've presupposed there is a degree of mindedness, a degree of intelligence, I think, and so we naturally have this. For instance,
No, I don't think it's a presupposition. I think it's based on their experience with the animal itself.
Oh. Maybe so, but what is something that is maybe unexamined, then, is a better way to say it. Something that we don't naturally think about is that we do have this degree of relations to different animals. So we have insects, and they don't have many rights at all. Maybe some other smaller animals have more rights. But when you get up to intelligent animals, like monkeys or dolphins or things like this, they have a huge amount of rights, especially in not Italy, what am I saying? In India, right? I'll fix that in post. In India, dolphins are actually have the status of citizens there. They have every right that a citizen would have because of their hyper intelligence. And so I could imagine a case where someone is being attacked by a dolphin, or is going to attack a dolphin rather. If someone is going to attack a dolphin, they would protect the dolphin who has the rights.
Sure, I mean that's true in India, perhaps. Though I really don't know.
You can trust me on
that.
I read it on the internet, so it's got to be true.
But if I think that it's good to be hopeful, but it pays to be prepared.
Yeah.
And in this case. A second thing that I think they could do is perhaps engage with the animal, as you suggest, in training exercises for situations like someone falling in their cage. I mean, with a gorilla or any intelligent ape with which some form of communication is possible, there might be a way to prepare them for these kinds of situations in a way that allows this kind of tragedies to be stopped.
And they oftentimes will get really well bonded with their people that feed them and train them.
Oh yeah.
And who take care of them all the time. But the weird thing is that they have a very standoffish relationship to different people, to novel experiences and people like they don't know, right? So I think maybe the way to do this, and I'm no biologist, I'm not an animal expert or anything, is just to keep introducing them to new people in ways that is beneficial to both. Because they simply see people come by all the time and knock on the glass and make faces at them and stuff, and aggressively, seem to approach them.
They bare their teeth and stuff.
Yeah.
It's sad.
And so they see this enough, and they get one or two people who are taking care of them and who are nice to them. They like those, but I think it would be beneficial if we would just have a bit of an educational video before you enter a zoo or something that says, listen, this is how the animals are, this is how you should behave, don't do these things. And sometimes there are signs up, but...
Yeah, I mean, maybe. It just doesn't seem very practical. I mean,
No.
people don't go to a zoo to watch some kind of video beforehand. Where they,
Sure.
it's kind of like you're stepping into an airplane.
Yeah.
And there's also, in addition to that, I think there's something to be said for people to take their own responsibility and teach their children to stay with their mommy and not run off into some kind of mode.
And you think that would be instinctual?
Especially in the zoo. I mean, I don't want to put the blame on the mother. I don't know what happened and how the kid got away from her, but I think parents should definitely put some extra emphasis on telling their children that they should be careful around the enclosures. I mean, there's also crocodiles and other incredibly dangerous animals in zoos that you just have to stay away from, especially if you're a child. I mean, a crocodile can just rip a child in half with just one bite and twist. It would have been much worse than falling into the gorilla enclosure.
Yeah. Now, if they're fed well, that's not as likely to happen.
No, not very much.
But if they're making an aggressive move towards the crocodiles, of course, then they're doomed.
If you're jumping into the crocodile enclosure and you're going for a swim among them, that's a dangerous prospect.
Yeah. But I think that, and this is what's strange, is we've become so detached from some kind of Darwinian, Hobbesian like state of nature that we no longer have these instincts not to approach these wild animals. Just keep our distance. There's no more. I think culture and memetics have overtaken some of the basic intuitions and basic instincts that we have as a human species.
I mean the animal, and especially big animals, have lost their mystique in a way.
Yeah.
Their danger, and that's why they've lost their automatic respect that they receive, because we are aware of how our environment treats these animals, and because they're basically not treated in any way in our environment, because we live in environments where these animals are non-existent. I mean, perhaps if you live in Africa or in India, then you might have to be afraid of tigers and lions
on
in
the
some
outside
areas.
of the city, maybe, yeah.
But yeah, even then, only in some areas. So in that sense, our parents cannot give us this sense of danger that these animals hold. So the child didn't have this sense of danger to guide it, and that's why I think that the child wasn't exceptionally stupid. It was just as stupid as a 4-year-old would be.
It hasn't seen the appropriate responses to these situations before.
And maybe, I mean, if you're 4 years old, you're not sufficiently aware of the danger of moats, right? Because how many moats have you seen when you're a 4-year-old? Might have been the case that he had never seen one at all until he got to the zoo. So yeah,
it's kind of like the case of a really hot stove or something, and your mother says, "Don't touch that; it's hot." Mm-hmm. And of course, you've never experienced hotness or anything, so you go and touch it and you burn yourself.
Yeah.
And then you realize,
how many children burn themselves? I mean,
quite often. I mean,
all of them. Yeah. Basically.
That's how you learn. That's how you experience. And then you say, "Oh, I should trust this person because they don't want me to feel pain, and I don't want me to feel pain either." So you begin to have this training, and we don't have it anymore.
And because you know that it's damn hot and it's a terrible sensation as well.
But we don't have it with any sort of animals, at least in most modern societies. I mean, I can understand not having with maybe lions or whatever, but there's there's not even any prevalent predators in my environment that I would encounter ever in my life. I could live in a world where there's no dangers of me ever being attacked by anything. So I never have to learn a response.
Well, we still have these instinctual reactions with regards to spiders, I would say.
Maybe.
With regards to rats and mice.
Okay, yeah.
Because mice are sufficiently similar to rats.
Yeah.
And I think this is because, well, spiders are mostly dangerous in other continents, but there are some dangerous spiders everywhere. They can just be surprisingly venomous.
Yeah.
And then rats, I think, are a cultural heritage from the plague.
Yeah.
That's still being passed on.
Yeah, you're right. Now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, there are cases when you see a spider and you instinctually pull back. You know,
I mean, there's no reason why I should be afraid of a spider that's smaller than the nail on my pinky, but I still have a reaction to a spider that's even that small, especially if it is on my skin.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not as visceral for me. It's not as automatic for me. If I see a spider, but I grew up sort of in a mountainous place, and I was always around insects and stuff. So,
I mean, what if you try to imagine like a big hairy brown spider, you know, one of those long-legged ones, you know.
My favorite, yeah.
Yeah, like an Australian.
Oh gosh.
How do you call those? There's one.
As big as my head.
Funnel web spider.
Okay.
I mean, those scare me, but I also know they're poisonous, so that's like extra reason to be scary. But all the same, I mean, I think if a spider gets bigger than my hand, then it kind of depends on the make. If they're like fat and furry, then it's not such a big problem. But if they're really, skinny and big and furry, then it's
Well, I'll know that if that spider's ever attacking you, I'll take it out. I'll save your life and I'll get rid of that. Yeah. that animal doesn't have as many rights as an ape would, I think. But just in summation here, because we're kind of running out of time.
Definitely.
This case, I think, is really indicative of sort of a presupposition we have about our species' place in the world. And so you see it in this one instance, in our automatic reaction to it, which I think was correct here. But then you can also stretch that out and make it more abstract and show that we treat animals this way automatically in many regions. And it's detrimental to our environment in a lot of ways. And so we have to sort of challenge that idea that our species is somehow better or somehow more worthy of having resources or something than animals are. I think this is very important now. If they are in a cage and you do go in there, maybe it's okay to take them out, and it's probably the right idea to save the child's life. But in other areas, like just in the wild, we have to say, well, it would be nice for us to have this area of the jungle. We can make houses here, people can live there. But there's animals living there, and we need to protect their rights, not to be encroached upon. And so this monkey, or this ape that was living there, was in fact encroached upon. So it had a certain area. Of course, we had locked it in there. But its area was encroached upon, and we decided automatically that the child deserved, and this is kind of a bold claim, though, the child deserved more life than this monkey did. And of course, there's many more people in the world, but of course it's easier for me to empathize with a child, so I do think that's the right choice. However, I think that we should consider this case as an example of our treatment to animals in general. So I think that's kind of my position here. What do you think?
Yeah, as a closing remark, I would like to repeat that I think they should have perhaps instigated some kind of protocol for keeping people away from the incident, so that they couldn't agitate the animal even further with their incessant screaming. And in addition to that, perhaps they could have had some training protocols, so there could have been a handler who could have tried to approach the ape before they tried to shoot him. But I'm not sure whether this would work, because if you watch documentaries like Blackfish, for instance, then you know that we can have a great rapport with animals, but this rapport may fail us in the worst of times.
That's the killer whale, right? That eats its trainer.
Yeah, well, at least bit it and dragged it under.
Oof.
And I'm not sure I think it was the same whale that did it with several trainers, and one of them was dragged under, but managed to survive through breathing techniques, and another one, a woman, was dragged under and drowned. This is what at SeaWorld.
And these things are really intelligent, and they know where they are, and they know that they're not free. They feel that.
But this adds to your point that I would like to extend your point that I think that holding an animal in captivity is an encroachment on the animal's space already, because you have limited the space beyond what the animal needs. There are hardly any zoos that provide good living environments for animals. They're always small.
And if you could provide that space, you could never see them. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Because they would just be on the other side of the...
So it's essential for zoos that we encroach on an animal space. So a zoo, just like the SeaWorld attractions, are always spaces that put extra stress on animals. Mm. So they really make these situations much harder to handle.
And I just want to say as an aside, one book that really influenced me is Kinds of Minds by Daniel Dennett. So I'm going to plug that here because I love that book. Yeah. And it talks about how we can tell and what we should do to tell what kind of mind an animal has. And if we can do this, because they're incommunicable, you can't talk to them in a certain way, but they do have intentionality, they do have wants and desires, and it's sort of our duty, or our privilege, I guess is a better way to say it, our privilege to not hurt that process. I mean, not to stop them from reaching their wants and desires as much as possible, as long as it doesn't hurt our lives, you know. And so that's one of the things that convinced me to hold a certain position on animals and the way that they think, is that they demonstrate intentionality, and so I should, like that you demonstrate intentionality, I assume that you have a mind. It's obvious to me because of the way you act, the way you talk about inner states, but they can't talk about those to me. So they just demonstrate them in a certain way by having certain reactions to their desires, right?
All right. Well, that's all for now. Yeah. Join us next week when we talk about Monsanto Syngenta and the
GMOs.
Copyright of genetic material.
Yes, and if you have any questions, feel free to email us at beyondnewsandevil@gmail.com, or just drop a comment in the YouTube section down below.
And that's all for all. My name is Teun.
My name is Will.
And goodbye.